Hello. So I am so excited for today's live because I talk about breath a lot and what that really means within the body, how that can affect mobility, performance, a lot of different things. And I am bringing on researcher and expert himself, Brian Mackenzie. I recently actually went to a course of his. Hi, Brian. Okay, let's bring you on right now. Recently went to a course of his called Lean Into Stress. So if anyone is dealing with stress or anything else, like let's talk about all the things. So I also want to be able to answer questions. Okay, this is working hopefully. Fingers crossed as well, because Instagram doesn't always. Brian, it says you declined. Why did you decline? All right, wait, hold on. Oh, there it is. Okay. Going live. Hopefully. Hello.
Hi. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you?
Okay.
Okay.
Internet keeps popping, but yes. Okay, there we go. I'm going in the other room.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Hi. Thanks for joining.
Hi. Good to see you again. You're welcome.
I know. I'm bummed I didn't get to stay around and say hi after your amazing workshop, but I had to go.
I know. Well, I dragged that out pretty long.
Hey, a lot of people wanted to ask questions.
I know.
Which is
they
awesome.
do. And it is. It's also a curse. So, you have to be very careful. I'm sure you're very well aware of all of this.
Definitely, 100%. All right, well, okay, let's tell people who you are real quick, just for my audience. I gave a little snippet, but there's a lot of what you do and what you've created and the courses and the research and the books.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw Andy Galpin, actually. Last week I went to speak at Fullerton, and he gave me...
Oh.
Yeah.
Good on Galpin for handing out our book.
Yeah. It was funny because I was talking about the course that I just took with you, Lean Into Stress.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, I didn't know that you had written a book together. And he was like, you didn't know we wrote a book? And I was like, I'm sorry, I did not.
I mean, I didn't know you were from the 909, but now I do.
Yeah. Great. Well, tell people a little bit who you are. Real quick.
All right. I've been a coach in human performance for about 20 years. My background was in movement. Spent some time. I was actually a physical therapy assistant, and then learned I really did not want to be a physical therapist. And this is back in the late 90s. Nonetheless, I got into training people, got really good at it, got mentored by a number of people. I've spent some time in and around the movement space and really got good at understanding endurance sports because I helped fix broken runners in Orange County. I opened my first gym, one of 5 in Orange County, and then got involved with CrossFit very early on and kind of created a paradigm shift in how people train for endurance. We took a quality over quantity approach. And then after a number of years of doing that and traveling around the world, teaching, movement, training, all of these things, I stumbled back into breath work. And I've had a yoga practice before. I was very heavy into Ashtanga yoga at one point. And I've had these little snippets of breathing thrown into my life, but never paid attention to them because when you're a triathlete and you're doing yoga, you're doing that because you want to get flexible.
Yeah.
And you want to compete more, right? And so you don't pay attention to things. And thank God I had the education and the experience that I did, because when I stumbled back into breathing, everything popped, like it all made sense to where the foundation of everything began. And then, I got involved with, and I see Andrew Huberman, Dr. Huberman's on this thread. I got involved with a bunch of scientists and researchers that had, seen the work I was doing and saw how we were looking at breath work. We weren't just developing methodologies, we were actually, my background, what we really focus on is a principles-based approach. We look at the principles, we want to create awareness, and then we develop tools centered around these things. And, you know, Dr. Huberman was one of a number of people that reached out and was like, hey, you're actually the only person I can find that actually understands how to develop protocols for people, you know, in a particular fashion. And I'm doing a research project on fear, and I need protocols developed for these people. Wow. So it was, I got the opportunity to get involved with a lot of things because of the way we look at it. But I look at it from a top-down thing where we're looking at the brain, which you got to see all of this stuff, where we look at it from the brain and how we emotionally handle things and how the brain deals with breathing, and then how the body or the physiology actually handles breathing. And then your background in particular, movement and how breathing actually really impacts it all. And we are an interesting crop, in meaning the human being, in that we really understand these things separately, but the fact of the matter is they are only separate in language. They are all connected, and breath is the universal thing that connects behavior and biology.
I absolutely 100% agree. I love it. I mean, I've now, this year, I would say, been starting to dive in even more and more. It was actually last year when I went through something that immediately I felt the anxiety, kind of like, I felt like, and I laughed at myself because I was like, I know what to do in this situation. And I'm like grateful that I continue to learn the tools, because in that moment, laughed at myself for a moment from being in like the panic of it all, and then was able to shift, which is your state app, which we'll talk into as well.
Yes. Yes.
But it was such a beautiful thing to be able to shift myself from that state of anxiety and panic. And I can understand why people go into that and how frightening it can be if you have no idea that you have the ability to shift.
Correct. Yeah. And really that's all we're looking to do is trying to shift from one arousal state to the other. And, you know, and people look, when they hear the word arousal, they think I'm talking about sex, but it's not, that's not what we're talking about. You're shifting from, you know, more of an alert focused place to more of a downshifted, you know, like calm and relaxed place. And, you know, the key thing in what we've seen. So I've spent an exorbitant amount of time inside of many different methodologies. And the reason we the direction we ended up pivoting was not pivoting, but just staying away from methodologies, was because, you know, methods really are for specific things, right? Like they really are intended to do specific things. And we're looking for tools to actually implement real time so that we can apply training that then falls in real time. And that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with methodologies. Like I ran around with Wim Hof for a couple of years, and I was very close to him, and he's doing great things. And he's probably the most impactful person in breath work today because of the amount of people that have been impacted. But the stuff we're talking about is literally probably 5,000 years old, if not older. And they use a word called pranayama in yoga, and that means energy control or breath control. And we started figuring out that CO2 tolerance is literally, we've actually got research going on right now about this, but CO2 tolerance is literally the governor of, it's the metabolic stress messenger of the body. And so whether I work out, my respiration rate goes up because CO2 goes up, or whether I take on too much and I become emotional, I suppress it down, and so I react to it, right? And so we started really looking at that and what sort of protocols could work with different people, because I was seeing a big mismatch with people, like meaning specific protocols. And since Dr. Huberman continues to ping things on this thread, I'm going to use him as an example because he and I ended up becoming very close friends, and we're still colleagues. We could take a protocol that I would use for him to wake him up in the morning, and that same protocol that would actually get him alert and focused would put me to sleep. and vice versa, something that I would use to go to sleep. And this is based on how we actually emotionally kind of handle things. And that was the stuff we started to see. So we started digging into the emotional side and the neurobiology of things to understand that. And he's played a big role in what we've done with that. But there's been a number of people, including Galpin, Dr. Galpin, who is literally helping us with understanding something about state anxiety and CO2 tolerance being a predictor of this. And we've seen across the boards that CO2 tolerance in and of itself is a predictor of state anxiety. And what we're now going to see in research is we're going to learn more about, in specific instances with research, what those things are actually say.
Yeah.
So we're learning a lot.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, you're doing the research that is actually going to help push it all forward. And I love how real you are with everything too. Like, I'm not helping, I'm just giving you tools. Like, you do what you want with it.
Well, I've been around a lot of gurus, and I am not a guru, and I do not want to be that person. And I don't like taking credit. Like, I do my own work. And I've done a hell of a lot of work on myself. I've spent 20 years doing a lot of deep, deep, deep work. And nobody else is responsible for that. I am. I've had to do that work. And, you know, I don't want people to mislead themselves into thinking they aren't doing a lot of the work. And so that's why we take the approach we do from a principles standpoint. Is like, if we can give you the principles and you can actually understand these fundamental things, you can navigate space that is, we don't know what the limitation to that space is. And unfortunately, in the world we exist in right now, and that's what, you know, there's a beauty in what we're doing right now. Like, there's this amazing thing that we're able to connect, even though we kind of grew up in the same area at one point. But here, I'm up in NorCal, you're down in LA, and we're communicating on this thing. But the problem is that a lot of us get caught up in the whole negative side of this thing, thinking it's like this world that exists that's really real, and it's not really socialization. And so there's this double-edged sword with it. And you know, this all plays a role in what we do, and what we're trying to do is to get people to understand that, hey, all this anxiety that's going on out there, all these problems that we're experiencing right now, I can go back and read a number of books about history, about people that were putting up with a whole lot worse than we are right now, and we're not dealing with anxiety in the way that we are now. So I think it might be the amount of stimulus that we're actually putting in front of us and we're not paying attention to. And this is the big problem, is like, we're just not understanding that. And breathing has played such a fundamental role in not only how I've learned about this, but how we've been able to kind of help people understand breathing, and how it's a tool in the moment to actually make a better decision or understand the things that are going on with them.
Yeah, 100%. And you're using kind of these tools and stuff in order to teach people, one, about their stress levels and how to adapt and shift and change in you know, various states within their day. And also you're using it also to shift, isn't your art of breath, kind of teaching people how to shift into activity and out of asthma. And you posted something on anti-anxiety meds today, and just like all the different areas as to where this plays a role, which is literally everywhere. Yeah. And is that how you kind of got into breath work? Like, you felt the need within your own self, in your own life?
No.
No?
I got into it because I'm a performance junkie at heart. And I coach, you know, as you work with people, I put on a training mask because I laughed at it and I made fun of it. And, then I realized I had not used it. And so I also understand what ignorance is. And that's literally the definition of ignorance. So I put the mask on, and I instantly, when I took a breath with the mask on, I sat up and organized myself, because my diaphragm needed to be on because of the resistance that was going on, right? So I couldn't just take this really shitty breath, like, you know, I had to really dig in. And I literally, light bulbs went off like, oh my God, I could put this on my athletes and I wouldn't have to yell at them anymore about like getting organized when they warm up, and they'd start to understand how to be in better positions and blah, 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 blah. And then we started playing with that, and the physiological returns we started seeing were massive, meaning we were starting to see adaptations that we had not seen yet. Then I realized that we've got a resistance breathing device on our face. It's called a nose.
Yeah.
And then we started really realizing that this is not a new concept. This is probably a couple hundred, maybe 100 years or more old concept, where people started realizing indigenous cultures were rarely opening their mouths for anything, including hunting, gathering. They, even when they spoke with intent. There's a whole lot of stuff I've dug into, but the moral of this is that I looked at performance, but then I started playing with breath work, and then all of a sudden I found myself meditating, and I was somebody who never could meditate. Like I'm type A. Now I spend, I can spend upwards of an hour doing meditation stuff, and it's like I couldn't spend 2 minutes meditating. These were things that started to come, but then started peeling back layers of things where, I'd work with therapists, and I worked with people in particular at this point in my life on leadership and understanding psychology, so that I can actually be better at what it is I'm doing and understanding other people. And I think by and large that comes down to empathy to a large degree, and the ability to get there was due to breath work. So it really comes down to me recognizing what this was, and then lo and behold, at the foundation of any serious meditation practice is breath work. Yeah. So there's a reason why it's there. And then, hey, when we manipulate breathing when we're training, we're actually doing things. I mean, if you want to get more mobile, I've got plenty of stuff that we could play with, and you're already doing it. I saw you post, your post either today or yesterday, and it's like, yeah, it's genius. It's like, why wouldn't you use something to manipulate your tissue in order to relax, and open up, or even activate and turn on? And that it's the reality. It's literally that switch that's turning things on or off.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you talk into that? Because I don't know that everyone understands what the switch on and off means. And even CO2 tolerance, like I think a lot of people, especially my audience, won't know what exactly that means.
Yeah. So, we'll start with CO2 tolerance, and then I'll talk about the on and off switch. Perfect. So CO2 tolerance is, we don't breathe because of oxygen. I mean, we breathe because of oxygen, but that was like a 500 million year old deal that we made over evolution. Like aerobic metabolism sits at the forefront of all of energy for us, right? And so in order for us to take a breath when we're conscious, we're doing that, when we're awake, we do that because of chemoreceptors that are set up in the carotid and the aortic arteries. So arteries specifically, and this means going out going out towards the periphery. So it's a guesswork game. Carbon dioxide is an acid, and in the blood it's carbonic acid, and that acid, when it increases, can trigger us to breathe, right? Because it's coming through the blood barrier of the lungs, and that dumps into the lungs. So that trigger is actually setting us up to breathe. So it's guessing how much breath we need, right? So I breathe because CO2 levels get to a specific point. Now, that's from a metabolic functioning perspective. From the brain's perspective, those receptors are set up in the brain stem, which is our reptilian brain, the oldest part of the brain, and they're on autopilot. But when I have emotional context, and we all have it, I'm not special. I have it. I've played this game as much as I can, and the fact is when I'm overloaded or I get emotional in any way, shape, or form, my CO2 tolerance diminishes, my respiration rate will go up. That going up blows off carbon dioxide. So when I breathe through my mouth, it's not that I'm pulling more oxygen in or air in. It's I'm actually offloading carbon dioxide. That's the big culprit in the game. And so that also, in essence, creates more of a sympathetic uptick, because it does not allow us to actually kick oxygen molecules off the red blood cell for use. The only way oxygen molecules come off for mitochondria to use in aerobic function is by a carbon dioxide molecule replacing it. And so when we become efficient at carbon dioxide usage, that CO2 tolerance goes up, and we create more of a buffer or a layer in order for us to react. So it becomes more of a response instead of reaction. Now, in high effort training, working out, arguments, talking to people, I'm going to, this is a natural thing. I'm not saying it's not going to happen or you shouldn't do it. Yes, there are times and places to mouth breathe, but the nose regulates carbon dioxide. It also filters all the air. So it plays a critical role. The nose was designed with the respiratory system in mind. The mouth was designed with the digestive and communication system in mind. Doesn't mean we can't use this when we need to, but the fact is you don't have a real filter system for any of the air entering into the lungs. So anybody dealing with things like asthma, allergies, like we have these things, you're pretty much looking at you're probably a big mouth breather, at least at night, if not during the day, which can cause problems. So when CO2 tolerance is high, we look at people who have high CO2 tolerance levels. Go look at your seasoned, like big time guru yogis. They are non-reactive human beings. Or you look at the freediving community. They don't react to anything. They literally are very docile, calm individuals who do not get stressed out. And there's a reason, because they've developed such a high load tolerance to carbon dioxide. Where the rest of us, when we're not thinking about this, we tend to have just whatever we're on self-regulation. And self-regulation is sitting more, talking more, in front of screens more. So this is dysregulation of nature. We're nature. We're supposed to be outside in a survival situation. That's what we're hardwired for. I'm not suggesting that's what you go do, but I am suggesting in order to optimize yourself is to regulate your CO2 tolerance. So the on and off switch of breathing is this, is when I inhale, I'm sympathetic dominant. Contrary to a lot of the talk that's been out there, and these are some things that Rob Wilson and myself have really been working on. Rob's my counterpart in Art of Breath and a lot of the thinking that we do together in this with Power Speed Endurance. The exhalation is the off. A lot of people think that the exhalation is parasympathetic. It is not. The exhalation is an inhibition of sympathetic. So it's an inhibition of on. So this is why if I exhale longer than I inhale, I can literally change how parasympathetic I become. Right? And so this is also why nasal breathing can have a profound effect on parasympathetic activity, regardless of the activity I'm doing. Even if it's on my bike going as hard as I can, but I'm nasal breathing, because I'm now parasympathetic dominant, because the exhale it's harder to offload a lot of that CO2, right? Now, there's a time and a place to mouth breathe, all that, like I said, but this is where the on and off switch comes. We developed the State app in conjunction with understanding how people actually emotionally handle stress, and to build people's CO2 tolerance in a way that gave them protocols that worked for themselves. And so that became a big catalyst in helping people do breathing protocols that train them in specific things. So this is where technology can have a training effect, right? And we can use it for training, but then in default situations, it's like, don't whip. I mean, you're not going to meditate if you're in a stressful situation. You're not going to, you don't need to pull out your app. It's how much training have you done in order to understand, hey, if I just control my breathing and allow the breathing to dictate what happens or go to where I feel, then you've solved the riddle. And that's all we are trying to get people to do, is to feel. Once you can start to feel, the game is over. It's literally infinite possibility.
100%. I mean, this even relates to pain in the body. Have you guys done any research with like breath and the pain and
No, there's actually stuff out there that exists. We will in time, I'm sure. But I mean, look, here's how pain works. I've studied enough about how pain receptors work, and there's a great book out there, How the Brain's Way of Healing by Dr. Norman Deutsch, and he studies and he gets into a lot of this stuff. But in people who deal with chronic pain, they dedicate about 20 or 25% of the neurons in the space that normal people who don't deal with chronic pain only dedicate 5%. Here's what happens with pain. When your body becomes more alkaline, you shut down more of the pain receptor sites. So when you regulate your breathing, you regulate the acidity of the system. So you can change how you deal with pain just by breathing. There's a reason why why they have this thing called Lamaze for birth, ladies. Like, there's a reason why there's another practice called rebirthing breathing. There's literally like, what's the first thing they tell women in labor? Breathe, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And then what do they do with a kid? What's the first thing you do when you come into this life? Whack, you inhale. What's the thing you do when you leave this life? You exhale. Right? So it's a profound thing that has a lot of amazing things centered around it and a lot of the woo-woo culture. But what we're trying to do is sew up the woo-woo with the real scientific and real factual things that we now understand. I should not say facts. And science isn't about facts. It's about what we now understand and moving forward. And, we've really stumbled into something that really has helped people get back to feeling. And I think that's what we largely have missed in this life, is the ability to really feel and understand. And, it's just, it's simple if you're willing to go through the kind of spinning out that we've kind of put ourselves into, and really see the other side of that, so that you can actually set boundaries for yourself. And no matter what you're doing, whether it's business, personal life, or whatever, and that ends up resonating through your personal life and people. And so you understand these things. And when you step those lines, you can, okay, I'm going to do the difficult thing right now and communicate versus stuffing that down or not dealing with this. And, it's why we train. Like, look, like we all work out because we understand how difficult, that if we do difficult things in training, we get to adapt and create really rad space. Well, the brain and the psychology is the same. It works the same way. These are only separate in conversation.
Right. 100%. I was just reading this comment that came up right now too, and saying, like, she's been dealing with lots of stress because of the things around us. And that's exactly what you're saying. Like, it's not that the stress is going to go away. And I talk about this a lot too. It's like, and we put ourselves in more stress when we think about things so much, where it's like, especially when I'm dealing with pain, it's like, with people in pain, it's like, okay, I have pain. Oh no, pain is bad. Why is pain here? I don't have time for pain. And then I have to do this, and I have to take care of my kids, and I have to go to work. And you're just like building all of these layers just by thinking about all these things in a negative capacity too. And I think we've created this space of social media where you can use it for amazing purposes, which is what you're doing and providing the tools and what I'm trying to do. But you get so much feedback of egos, of this is right, and this is right, and this is how you do it. And it's just this attack of, we're continuing to live in this stressful life. And I love that at Lean Into Stress as well, you made the comparison of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic with the focus, right? So vision is going. So if our vision is channeled on this app and into the social media rather than expansion and that widespread view, then we're like shifting our state just in that aspect too.
Yeah, the fact that we're all looking at this camera or this phone right now, or wherever you're looking at, however, if you're on an iPad, you're in a high focus, high sympathetic state. Like, you don't have a choice. Like, right? And so that's where, this is where Dr. Huberman's work, is going and has been, and it's like, I use one of the things that I learned with him is, like, how many people freak out looking at a sunset? None of them. Why? Because it's beautiful? No, it's just math. You're telling your eyes to widen out, and it literally downshifts you. So get away from the dopamine for a little bit. Stop thinking about what's here, because it's not. you got to live your life. I mean, there's a reason why I live up and, out in nature now. Like I literally have just, I know where I feel best, and I know where I'm most creative. I also know where I'm least creative, right? And that's in here. But I also realize that if I want to share my work and I want to get the work out and I want to help people, that I've got this amazing opportunity to do something just like you, right? Is to share that stuff. And this is literally the most basic thing that we do on a cellular level. This is just on a massive scale, on a global scale. And so cells share information. Well, so do we. Yeah. And if you are willing to become as authentic as you possibly can, you can actually alter the landscape of what it is you're doing. Look at what you're doing. Look at how many people follow you and how much fun you're having doing this, right? Yeah. Like, did you ever think you'd be doing this?
No.
Exactly. Okay. And you look like you're pretty happy. So, I don't know, because I don't hang out with you, and that's the reality of it. Yeah. Like, this is what's not real. I can only assume what that is, right? And so, like, I live really close. I'm out in it. Like, literally, I listen to coyotes, crickets, and frogs at night, and I go walk in nature every day, or I'm running in nature, I'm playing in nature, because I know what it does to me. I know how I feel, and I know what those things do. And you can do that in LA too. Like, there's great places to do that.
I moved out of West Hollywood. I had to move out of West Hollywood, closer to the beach. And so every day I take a walk down to the rocks on the marina, where there's like literally no one, because the marina is still kind of quiet. Like, don't move here, people. And it's nice because I can just like get outside, go by the water, and it's so incredibly peaceful. And it's like you said, I'm getting that panoramic view. I'm getting back into my parasympathetic every single day, and it's a requirement. And I know when I don't do that, how I feel. And it's so interesting too, to go back to, like, how we used to punish kids is sticking them in a corner and making them face the wall, which is like bonkers. And even my sister teaches in Corona. She's an elementary school teacher and a primary school teacher, and they have mindfulness classes now. And for detention, you do mindfulness, which I think is absolutely beautiful. So it's coming, and people are more aware of it. And she reads breath books with them. I got a recommendation from Jill Miller, and so I got her to buy the book, and she does breath books with my nieces and nephews. It's like such a beautiful thing. And so it's coming, and you doing the work that you're doing is allowing other people to be open to it. So it's so incredibly,
thank you.
So grateful.
I love Jill Miller too. Look, there's an oncologist who just commented about that. She does this with her patients, and that's fantastic. I mean, look at most cancers thrive in anaerobic environments, and so look, you're getting somebody more aerobically efficient. How can that not help? I'm not saying it's a cure-all, nor would I ever say breathing's a cure-all. It's just something that kind of leads us back to something, and there may be a problem. And this is why we're doing the work that we're doing. I mean, I just went to the Cleveland Clinic last week and talked to 100 ER docs, and then went into an open heart surgery to see how we could possibly be helping in those situations when the shit hits the fan for those folks. And it's in dire need. It's really like people have, and it's crazy. Like just because I'm talking about breathing now, I'm going into the Cleveland Clinic, or I'm going to the Brooks professional running team next week, or I'm going into San Quentin on Friday, which I am doing. And I'm talking to inmates there, and like, why is this happening like this? And it's just because you're sharing something that you felt passionate about, and we're able to share about it authentically. And that's what this is for.
100%. And so many people are asking right now for different techniques, and I will say the app. State. The state app. So I'll type this in real quick. At shift_state. There you go. So if you saw what I just posted, if you go to that, our website is shiftstate.io. And what the subscription will do, it's $2.99 a month, I believe, which is cheap. Okay.
it's wicked cheap, and you know, our new investors are not very happy about that. But um, anyway, you go in there. You're gonna do 5 questions when you sign up for the subscription. They screen. It's just basically 5 questions on how you emotionally handle stress. That tells us what protocols work for what situation for you. Okay, it's not foolproof, but it's pretty damn close. Then you do a CO2 tolerance test. This tells us how much stress you can be under for a breath cycle. All right. And so we've built that algorithm to where it allows us to really give you breath cycles that allow you to work through it and develop your CO2 tolerance as you progress through those things. Okay. And so it works throughout your day. There's a feel alert for the morning. There's a be present that works for like any time during the day you want to get more present. And then there's feel calm, which all of us could use for, you know, when we transition, because our big problem is transitioning. It's like going from one thing to the next without actually coming down. And so the feel calm is there for that. And then there's fall asleep at night, which is probably the best one you could do. It's just really going to downshift you and help with your sleep. And that's what we developed those for. So there's 4 there. There's going to be more in the future, but that's really what those are there for. You could also go to the Power Speed Endurance website, and there is a breath calculator on that. You could just do the CO2 tolerance test, and you could look at about 7 different protocols on that site, apnea-based and cadence-based, that you could play around with for free if that's what you want to do, which is totally fine. You can go do that, and you can explore it like I did and do a lot of deep work and figure out what works for you and what doesn't.
Yeah. Hey, that's one way. And there's a lot. I like how you also said there's like so many different emotions that start coming up when you do this type of work, and how you've seen women get angry and men start crying. And I mean, I've even basic breath work when I'm starting to like do tissue work on someone while we're going to start getting into things. And one of the women I had, she just started crying. She's like, I don't know why I'm crying. Like, why is this happening? And we're like, just allow. Like, and I love that I can hold space for people that just allows them to express whatever they need to in that moment. I think it's amazing. But do you want to talk into that real quick on like how emotions are driven by? Well, you did talk about how
a little bit. You know, I mean, so the cortex, the neocortex, is the most developed part of it. That's what makes us really human. When we go down, so when you look at the brain, if we start from the base layer, what's the least evolved, which is the oldest part of the brain, is reptilian brain, or the brain stem. So think of a reptile. They just literally are reactionary. They don't even have an attachment to their children largely, right? So their young are just like they hatch and they go, right? They know what to do. No attachment. Now keep this in mind. Okay, so hang on to that. No attachment with those types of babies, right? Move up in layers and think about your dogs and cats and things. Limbic system, so you get emotions involved and things like that. And then you've got the neocortex, where you have our development, and you have the storytelling scenarios. You have the motor cortex, which takes up a large space. There's a lot of things in there, but mostly I use the neocortex as the storytelling. The limbic system develops as we are kids, and we learn our attachment and authenticity into life. And so when we're born, we're attached to our parents. We are the most attached beings there are. There's nothing we can do about this. I'm not saying you can't undo this. You cannot undo this. We need our parents for a long period of time, right? But depending upon how we're raised is how much that authenticity gets suppressed. And in authenticity, those are where the emotions go, right? So we develop skills through that limbic system and storytelling on how to get things. Brian developed, and I know if you all can see me in my hands and my arms, and I'm very tattooed. I grew up in Orange County in the 80s, and that was a very punk rock environment. And so the people I looked up to were very rebellious, but I chose rebellion and anger and things like that in order to get things for myself, because it got me attention. We all seek attention and love. right? And it's just what we do, and it's perfectly fine. And it's just how we go about it. I'm not going to tell you how you did it, but it'd be good to go explore how you did that as a child, because you're going to start to understand that as an adult. And so the emotional system works like that. And so the emotional system will trigger on with things, especially breathing, because it's upward of the breath center, right? And so if I actually can calm things down or raise things up, I can tap into the emotional center, which then can trigger stories. And so the stories start to play themselves out around things. And this is where the deeper layers of where I can do real therapy or real work can play in, if I'm willing to actually look at where those stories began. And when I start to look at my childhood, I can go, oh, now I understand why I reacted to my parents the way I did. Now I understand why when I'm in an argument with somebody, I default to this specific behavior. And I have largely been able to eradicate most of that behavior that becomes negative through this process. I will not stop being rebellious. I exist outside the law, but I can only exist there because I'm willing to tell the truth and willing to be honest. I don't like I'm 100% unemployable. It's just a fact. Like, it's just, but these are things that I've been able to come to terms with and own and create a life for myself because I've done this work. And breath work is that thing that plays the gap. And so, you know, you look at Viktor Frankl, and he has this big quote that talks about in between stimulus and response is a place that exists called choice. Called choice. And if you actually, like, in an instant when you have an emotional response to something, don't react to it. Breathe into it. So that you're just buying yourself time to create a gap in where you can actually find where that space is. And so this is where the hard wiring, or what we could call plasticity, has its place. In a positive sense, because plasticity can work in the negative sense too. And that's when Brian became rebellious and continued to react to things in a poor way. Now, for some people, it may be crying, like it may be getting emotional at everything, right? And so what is that, and where does that stem from, and how does that play out? And maybe next time, instead of getting emotional, maybe I breathe into this and go, okay, where in childhood did this maybe begin? You know, and so that it just provides an opportunity. That's what emotion is. It's an opportunity.
100%. I think it's so important for people to just start diving in. And I think introducing breath work is one amazing way just to start to introduce this and start to explore and see what can open up. I think continuing to do the work is what I've done. Like, I've done a lot of stuff to unpack all of my stuff. But breath work is one thing that I continue to come back to all the time. Like, it is 100% my go-to. Even on our mirror in our bedroom, we have breath work, gratitude, intention written down, and we have to check how often we're doing them throughout the week for me and my partner, because that's like, it's something that grounds and connects us so intimately when we do it together as well. And safe breath, like, I think that's also a super powerful thing for couples to be doing. And then just personally, like, how am I doing that in my own life and for my own mind and emotions and everything, especially in a world of go, go, go and stress, and on this app a lot.
Yeah. I mean, this is where our businesses exist to a large degree. And it's a place for me to work out information too. Like, I get feedback from people enough to where I'm like, oh, okay, that didn't go off so hot. But, or it's like, oh, okay, that killed it. Like, that was awesome. You know, like, maybe I should focus a little more. Anyway, you know, I think, you know, the interesting thing for me is that I've found what I like to really do around breath work. Like, I don't have a planned breath work practice, but I breathe every morning. And then I have a movement practice that I do every morning. And I walk, and I do these things, and they've changed my life. When I stop doing, or for some reason, if I don't do those things in the morning, something's off. That is the indicator. Like that becomes the indicator. Like when I travel, I can breathe in my room at my hotel or by Airbnb. I can move, I can do some simple movement stuff, and I can go for a walk in whatever city I'm in.
Yeah.
I can do those things, and they all change how I do things. And so this is where, you know, and even if, like, look, you don't need to make it complicated. You can even, like, just shut your mouth and go for a walk and breathe out of your nose. You can hold your breath and, you know, for as long as you can, and then give yourself 5 or 6 or 10 breaths in between and continue to hold. You're going to do profound things for your body that literally will change how you function as a being. And it's quite amazing.
Yeah. This has been amazing. Thank you. I mean, the
You're welcome.
comments have been unreal because people are just resonating so deeply, and you make it accessible. And I appreciate that too. The ability to make complicated stuff, which could be very accessible and easy for people to understand. And you created the app, which is just amazing because now people can explore it. So it's so amazing. I have it, and I'm grateful for it, and I hope that other people subscribe and get involved and just start to understand and start to learn. That's all. Like, just start somewhere.
Yep. Just start somewhere. That's it.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Well, I certainly appreciate your support, and I appreciate what you're doing tremendously. From my vantage point and the work you're doing, it makes it very easy for me to say yes to things, you know. So
I appreciate that so much. And guys, go follow him. He has all the information. I like looking at your stories, what you're telling people. You did a live answering Q&A today. So, I mean, you're giving amazing support and feedback for people to continue to learn. So, amazing resource. Plus, you have Art of Breath.
Yep. Art of Breath, we teach it globally. And we also have the Art of Breath online. So you can do, if you're interested in understanding this for performance, it's online. We have the app on this, and then we have the foundation too. So if you're interested in kind of being involved ground floor and donating ground floor to getting, we're really the Health and Human Performance Foundation. It's on Instagram. The entire goal is to go after non-pharmacological solutions to helping our own biology. So things like breath work, things like vision, things like, you know, just exercise, movement in general, like that's what we're going after, and we need help. So
yeah. I love it. Amazing. You're doing amazing things. Thank you. Keep it up.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Don't get off the app. I know it's stressful. Don't get off.
No.
All right, Brian, I so appreciate this. Hope I see you soon when you're in LA.
Yes.
All right.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Bye-bye.